When it comes to speaking professionally, your audience is everything. If they don't understand you or aren't receptive to what you're saying, then it isn't a good thing. When you're speaking in the moment, your audience will give you signals of how you're doing throughout your talk. But unless you're constantly involving them by asking questions or encouraging them to give some type of nonverbal response, there's very little communication between both parties. You have to figure out a way to connect with them. The more you're able to get into their minds and cater to their feelings, the longer you will be around and the more you will prosper in the speaking arena. Every time you speak, you want it to seem like you're making a personal connection with each audience member. It doesn't matter if it's a small room or a room filled with 1,000 attendees. Each person should feel some type of special connection to you, or at the very least, that's what you should aim for. The purpose of you speaking is to serve your audience. There's no other way to put it. Therefore, you have to understand them. You have to put yourself in their shoes. You have to constantly ask yourself, what is my audience thinking about? Therefore, you should be constantly studying them. So during your school days, how did you go about studying for a test? In high school, it may have consisted of study guides. In college and grad school, maybe you paid or should have paid attention to class and take notes. You may have even formed study groups with other students to compare notes. The same strategy applies when it comes to studying your audience. They're giving you their attention as you're talking, but you should equally be paying attention to them as well. Yes, it's another thing you must juggle in the moment, but our audience members' body language is a big hint to if you're interesting or not. There may be points in your talk where people are more attentive. For example, let's say when you're telling a personal story filled with triumph. Those are things you really need to pay attention to. If you have a team working for you, then it gets even better. Why? Because now you have an extra set of eyes that can also study your audience as well. If you're constantly comparing what you see in a moment and what your team sees after every talk, you'll find that each talk will constantly improve because you're getting a feel for what your audience truly needs in that moment. Even before you make it to the stage, you should be conducting an audience analysis. One thing I failed to bring up when I mentioned this in the previous tip is that if you ever have the opportunity to do a gig and for whatever reason the event organizer can't provide you with the information on your audience, you probably shouldn't do that gig. At the very least, they should be able to provide you with major demographics such as age, gender, education, and culture. These things shape what you say and how you say it. When you ignore them, you display ignorance, a type of ignorance that not only impacts your audience negatively, but also stunts your growth. Understanding the world from your audience's perspective is key if you want to create a talk that stands the test of time. It's also key if you want to customize your talk because you won't always be talking to the same people every time you speak. If you don't get the laugh you expected when you tell a funny story, make note of it. Maybe because you were dull when telling it, or it may be that the story was only funny to you. If half the audience seems to be disengaged while you're talking, make note of it. It could be that your energy just wasn't where it needed to be. You see, if you pay attention to how your audience reacts in the moment, they will tell you everything you need to know. It will confirm what you're doing that's great and also shine light on things that you need to improve on. Only a stubborn person would choose to ignore the areas where they need to improve. And beyond speaking, that goes for life in general. The more tenured you become, the more you should see yourself growing. You should also see your audience growing. But with that growth comes the constant expectation of catering to your audience. When you get with an event organizer, they're going to expect you to do your own homework. Yes, they can provide you with information on the audience that you'll be presenting to. But will you put in the extra work to make sure your message will be specifically for that audience in that moment? That's what you'll ultimately be hired for, and that's what constantly separates the good speakers from the great speakers. If you found this tip useful, please like it and share it. Comment on it as well and let me know what you think. Until next Monday, my name is Julian Leonard, and this tip was brought to you by the J. Leonard Group.